Hi everyone and welcome back to Stephan Levera podcast brought to you by Bold. So for American listeners, go to getbold.io. You can buy, sell or store your Bitcoin there using your own 2 of 3 multi-signature vault over at getbold.io. Now, joining me on the show today is Ethan from Bitaroo. Now, Ethan is the founder or co-founder of Bitaroo and also involved in Bitcoin in the Australian community. So first off, welcome to the show, Ethan.
Thanks, Stefan. Thank you for having me.
So you've been running Bitaroo for a while, and it's sort of known as one of the Bitcoin-only options in Australia in terms of an exchange that people can go obviously buy and sell their Bitcoin. Let's start with a bit of kind of where things are at in Australia with Bitcoin generally, just for from your perspective. Do you think it's growing as a community? Are the businesses in Australia growing? Just a bit of an overall sense of it.
Sure. Well, look, yeah. As adoption goes, definitely, I think Bitcoin, there's more adoption as we go. I think ETFs made things very interesting. I think for years we knew that Grayscale is trying to do ETFs, and we always thought, institutions, they are the ones that are going to buy it. When ETFs came out, we discovered that boomers also like it, and Zoomers even like it, because it's so easy. You just do it on your app, with your other stocks and bonds and so on. So when that happened, that changed, a lot of things for us. On the exchange level, we kind of start adding more services that we believe, to kind of show the difference between actually holding Bitcoin versus, buying an IOU on Bitcoin, which is, what ETF is. But so I think we're seeing a bit of a shift in the retail demand. It looks to be, more subtle and, more moderate, let's say, not as crazy, as it used to be, in the previous bull run. So I think that changed, but there's more and more people that are looking into it. We're seeing more merchants adopting it. That's also why we launched the point of sale. There's, as far as the community goes, there is also a Bitcoin conference happening, as I'm sure you're aware, in Australia.
And I guess
Bitcoin
we should
Alive.
just call that out. So Bitcoin Alive. I just want to make sure that, what's the website? Bitcoinalive.io, isn't it? Yeah, bitcoinalive.io. So I guess while we're here, just quickly mention that. So that's Bitcoin only conference, March 8th. I won't be there, but I know some of the guys running it, and so for any listeners, if you are thinking about it, now's a good time. Bitcoinalive.io, or just shout that out for listeners. But yeah, go on.
100%. Look, they're doing great work, and it's hard to bring international speakers because of the distance, but they do manage to bring some. I have to say something about the Aussie community. I miss them. Like you, I haven't been in Australia for a while. I visited actually a few months ago, but that was first time in years. And I miss the Aussie community. It's so Bitcoin only and so toxic about it. I mean, we both travel the world, and many times the Bitcoin meetups are mostly Bitcoin. They're not only Bitcoin. It's like it's okay to talk about other things, and in the in the Aussie community, it's not. I think it's the most Bitcoin only toxic community that I know, and I personally love it. It fits my character beautifully. So I think that's happening. There's a lot of meetups. There is, of course, the world famous Bush Bash, that happens now even in 4 states, where it started in 1 state and moved to 3, and now it's in 4 states, and hopefully more states will join soon, and it became more and more decentralized. There were 2 co-founders to it, and they ran all the Bush Bashes, and now every state has its own Bush Bash organizers. So I think there's a lot of good things happening, as far as the community and as far as Bitcoin adoption. So on the people level, I think things is going up, as far as Bitcoin in Australia. On the government level, I'm sorry to say that that's not the case. It's not coming 100%, from the government. It comes, from the global attack on Bitcoin that is happening, by FATF. So the
Financial Action Task Force, FATF,
exactly.
Which I've done episodes on that. Listeners can check out my recent episode with Open State. It's probably a good one for that one.
Definitely.
So yeah, but go on.
Yeah. So your listeners know all about it. I have to say that, the main thing that bothers me with them is their recommendations. It's a mafia-style recommendation where if you don't follow the recommendation, they'll put you on the gray list and then on the blacklist, and then nobody will trade with you. So Australia is now, unfortunately, is bringing in the travel rule, and they say it very, clearly on their paper that it's because, FATF is making them do it. So travel rule is coming to Australia. KYC on Bitcoin wallets is coming to Australia. So like not even touching fiat, not even touching the Aussie dollar, but they want to bring KYC because they're saying that KYC, a wallet basically is transferring value. And if you're the one transferring it as the custodial wallets, then they want to have KYC on that. So that's very alarming for us. When we pointed out that this is not okay, and anyone can just download another app from the App Store, and instead of the revenue going to an Australian company, it will go to an overseas company. They told me not to worry because this is a globally coordinated effort. So that made me very relieved and happy. But so there's these things are happening on one side. Another side, they're trying to enforce financial services license, which is very expensive and very hard to obtain and very expensive to hold. Again, on centralized exchanges. So the good news that is the only I can bring from this is that the Aussie government is actually pushing centralized exchanges to become self-custodial, self-custodial exchange. So that's a good thing. It will change how things are operating. So, for example, think about wallet of Satoshi. They might have to become a self-custody wallet, same as Breeze are. So it's very interesting and very exciting, I guess, news in that sense. We just hope that that will satisfy them for a while, for a few years, because the trend is not great. The good news, I guess, is coming from the states. So the U.S. administration is very, very pro Bitcoin, and they're more advanced already than the Aussie government. So we're hoping that with time, this will also come to to other countries, and of course, including Australia, where the government is going to put more difference between Bitcoin and crypto. Like with the AFSL, it's funny, the Australian Financial Services License that they want us to have. So, they're saying, look, they're saying, the government is saying, the Attorney General office are saying that they don't think that crypto is a financial product, but they want to regulate it as if it is. So they're creating like a special crazy hybrid. And we, as an Australian, back then I was also, a director at the Australian Bitcoin industry body. We met with them and we told them that we're going to solve all their problems. Crypto is a financial product. Bitcoin is not crypto. But crypto is a financial, it is being, issued by companies. It is a financial product. So we really like that idea. They did not. They're treating all of crypto as one basket, which, as I said, the US is already more advanced because US is looking at Bitcoin, at untrusted securities, NFTs, at privacy coins, at scams. They are looking at the different baskets more and more. And we believe that this trend will continue, and hopefully it will come to Australia soon. So
I see.
That was my rant, I guess, about the Aussie government.
Let's disaggregate a few of these pieces, right? So as you mentioned, kind of the travel rule, I think that's pretty much been done to death on this show, so maybe we won't need to cover that as much. But I guess, high level of that is financial institutions who are helping facilitate these transactions between them, one financial institution and another, they need to exchange information, and that might mean things like the customer name, customer address, and the amount transferred and things like this. And there are some of these, I guess, in the US, some of these travel rule protocols that are, in play between big KYC exchanges. That's kind of on one side of it. On the other side, you mentioned the AFSL. So this relates more to not as much about the AML and the KYC and the sanction stuff. This is more about being a regulated financial services entity, right? So can you just explain a little bit about this AFSL part? What will it mean for the Australian Bitcoin industry?
Well, the AFSL is a license that currently is only imposed on entities such as banks. They want to impose it also on centralized exchanges or custodians, basically. They're saying that if you're holding value, this is the new terminology that they brought into play. They're not even saying, oh, it's crypto or it's Bitcoin or it's fiat. They're just saying it's value. Okay, so they're saying if you're holding value as a custodial service, then you need to be regulated, more heavily. Now, the AFSL is hard to obtain because it's not just, oh, you just pay a fee and that's it. You also have to prove that you have qualified staff with banking experience and so on and so on. And that staff, is usually, not cheap. And the second thing is that then in order and then it costs, quite significantly to hold it, because there's also insurance involved, and the insurance is also very, very expensive. These costs amount to the fact that the Bitcoin industry, if this is, presented and becomes law, the Bitcoin industry in Australia, as we know it, will cease to exist. We currently have 5 Bitcoin-only exchanges. 4 of them are brokers. 1 of them is the full order book exchange like Bitaroo. And out of those 4 are custodials. 1 is not. So all of us will either cease to, or the other 4 will either cease to exist, or what will probably happen will become self-custodials. Self-custodial is relatively easy for a broker. It's virtually, I think, impossible for a full order book exchange. We'll have to see if we could still maintain the trade page, but if not, we'll continue to operate, with the buy and sell and the other services we have, the spend, the pay, the vault, the point of sale, and so on. So this will morph the Australian Bitcoin industry into being self-custodial, because only the big crypto exchanges will be able to afford the costs of maintaining the AFSL. This is something that was discussed, I don't know, like a couple of years ago. Then it kind of went to bed, and then it surfaced last year again, and now again they're talking about it. So we don't know if this will happen, but it is a great concern. Mainly because, as I said, like a lot of our users are not Bitcoiners. I mean, you and me are Bitcoiners. I guess most of your listeners are Bitcoiners, but most of our users are not Bitcoiners. There's people that want to buy Bitcoin, to hold Bitcoin. They think it's a good investment or so on. So they prefer to keep it with us. Some of them even, pay us, fees in order to keep it with us, the custodial, the vault fees. So they prefer that over taking self-custody. So forcing them into self-custody, I don't think that this is good for many of them. Some of them, might be, unfortunately better off with ETFs, because there's less chance of losing it, less chance of being scammed, and so on. So we told this to the government. The government, nodded, but I don't think, that really changed their minds. The only thing we can hope for is that, we were able to influence a few key people there that maybe change something, maybe made a dent, maybe slow down the process a little bit, and we'll just see how it all plays out. So
yeah, okay.
That's kind of,
just to clarify, this change coming through that you're mentioning, is this something like, are we talking about like a bill in Parliament that's being, put forward, or are we talking more like delegated legislation? It's something that's going to be changing, at a specific regulator level, not at the legislative level.
This is something that currently the Attorney General Office is working on. So this is something that's coming from the government that they want to see. This is all post FTX blow up. I mean, if you remember, before FTX blow up, the trend was actually getting easier and easier, to be with Bitcoin, and even to be, with crypto, the disgusting C word. And if you remember, CBA, the biggest bank in Australia, was about to launch on their app that you could buy Bitcoin and 3 other cryptocurrencies on their app. And then once FTX blew up, they went 180. They completely canceled those plans, and instead imposed a very heavy 10K limit rule that no matter who you are, no matter how much money you have, you can only send to all the digital exchanges in Australia combined 10K a month. So they went from being very advanced and very pro Bitcoin and crypto, they became very anti. So this is still happening. Those waves are still happening, and this is what we're dealing with. As I said, we just hope that it will happen so slow that by the time that it will reach a more advanced level, the trend will change. Again, we're hoping that the current hope that it's going to come from the US, because the world takes lead from the US one way or another. So we were hoping that the US will maybe introduce more and more friendly Bitcoin regulation, and then the rest of the world will just look silly that that they're doing anti-Bitcoin regulation, and US is doing pro, and eventually and more business is just going to flow there.
The lead sponsor of this show is Bold. the best place to buy, sell, and save Bitcoin. For listeners in the US, Bold lets you secure your financial future with complete peace of mind by integrating a low-fee, Bitcoin-only brokerage with next-gen multi-sig vaults. With Bold, you can smash buy Bitcoin or set a DCA plan for only 0.99% fees and seamlessly deposit the Bitcoin direct to your Bold vault. The Bold Vault is a 2 of 3 collaborative multi-sig where you hold 2 keys and Bold holds 1 as a redundant backup, protecting against loss or theft. You can use Trezor, Ledger, or Cold Card hardware wallets to spin up a Bold Vault in just a few minutes, and the Bold Vault is the only collaborative custody vault available with 0 monthly fees. They're also offering 0 fees on your first $10,000 of Bitcoin buys and $25 of free Bitcoin when you buy $100 of Bitcoin or more. Try Bold today and upgrade your stacking experience over at getbold.io. And now, back to the show. I see, yeah. And so as I understand then, the main one you're talking about is this AFSL component. Are there any other parts of, let's say, Bitcoin regulation that are, coming?
Well, there is as I mentioned, the KYC on Bitcoin wallets. So again, they changed the terminology.
On the AML side, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's coming from Ostrak, from FATF and from Ostrak, and that basically is a change of terminology where they're saying if you're holding value on behalf of other people, and then you're transferring this value from to and from different users, then you need to know who these users are. So they want to bring travel rule and KYC on Bitcoin wallets at the same time. This is expected to happen next month, but with 1 year adoption period. So this will be in effect from somewhere like April 1st, 2026. Until then, if this will happen, and probably will, then what's going to happen is that, as I said, what I think is going. I hope none of the current Bitcoin business will, decide to close shop. I believe that all of us will just morph into self-custody.
But as an example, if you think about a wallet of Satoshi, right, based in Australia, they are obviously going to be impacted by this because part of what made that wallet so simple is that it's just very quick and easy to sign up. And that's why a lot of people use it. So I wonder what will happen there if this would impact their model in, April 2026. As I understand, the reason is the guys behind that wallet, they love Lightning and they really wanted to just make something to be able for people to be able to easily use it, right? Of course, I understand there are criticisms of it being custodial, but also on the other hand, that wallet started, I think, in 2019 or at that time, it was a lot harder to do a self-custodial Lightning experience with a good experience. And I think that's why so many people went to that wallet. Now, of course, if they go self-custodial, maybe that changes things, but it will obviously raise the bar in terms of which users can afford to do that and are, let's say, not just affording to do it, but kind of from a UX and a slick, easy experience perspective, right?
Yeah. So Wallets of Satoshi are the ones that actually are powering our Lightning solution in Bitaroo. So we have very good relationship with them. Great team there. Bitcoin only, toxic, maximalist, beautiful people. We spoke obviously about the upcoming, changes to regulation. I hope they don't mind me saying it, but I'm happy to say that they have zero intention to become KYC and they have zero intention to close shop. So they will have to look at becoming self-custodial, which again, as Bitcoiners, we agree that this is the way. We are custodial because it's easier for our users. We encourage our users to withdraw. We encourage our users to be self-custodial, but many of our users, don't do it for their own reasons. So we provide a service that we think is good. If we have to change to self-custody, something we already brought up with Ostrak is that we want to give our users a backup option. So the backup option will be when you download our app, we give you 12 words, you write them down, but there is a box, and then if you lose it, that's on you. But we want to give them like a box that they can tick, and if they tick that box, then they agree that their seed is being sent, encrypted and so on to 3 different companies, and virtually creating as if a multi-sig of their seed. Not exactly multi-sig, but that's how Ostrak sees it. And then like nobody is custodial of their seed, but if they want, they can call upon all these three companies and recompile their seeds so their funds are not lost. So this is something like in
so
the
it's
middle
more like
between...
more like a Shamir secret sharing as opposed to a multi-sig, right? But okay,
exactly.
go on.
But Ostrak doesn't know Shamir. They know multi-sig, so we're using terminology that they're comfortable with. But that's exactly the idea. Ostrak is looking into that. They are not sure. I mean, because it's a gray area now. I mean, let's say there are three companies. None of us are actually
The
holding
sole
the
custodian,
seed.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. But is it self-custodial or not? I mean, we think it is because none of us can by themselves, act, and move the funds. But this is something that we need clarification from Ostrak. We think this is for the client benefit because if customers lose their 12 words, it's gone. Nobody in the world can help them. But if they tick that box and those companies can come to the rescue, that's great. I think that's a bit similar to what Ledger had in mind. With their
it was a bit of a controversial feature, but it was called Ledger Recovery. And I think there were some Bitcoiners on Twitter who were very up in arms about that, and maybe for good reason.
I'll tell you my two thoughts about it. I told this to Ledger as well. I think that I get where they're coming from because we're seeing the same issue that they're seeing of people losing their seeds and then crying about it and so on. So I understand where they're coming from. I think Ledger made, I think, a lot of mistakes, during their life. But I think the big mistake with the recovery was, in my opinion, they should have introduced a brand new hardware wallet and say that wallet has that feature. Not that all the wallets now have that feature. I think that's what freaked a lot of Bitcoiners out. Is suddenly like you're looking at your ledger and think, oh, they could get into my seed. That's what freaked, I think, people out. If they would introduce a new hardware wallet, say, look, this hardware wallet is for noobs, people that are afraid, and they have the option to recover their seed. Okay, I get that. I understand where they're coming from. But the fact that they introduced it to all their hardware wallets, I think that's what caused a lot of the damage. But yeah, look, it's closed source. We don't know what's happening with all the closed source, software. And as I said, we know that Ledger got hacked, with their customer database, and they were not. I think they were not fully transparent about it, and so I think they made a few mistakes during their time, but I think they're still the biggest. And although in BTC Prague their booth is empty every time they are there, nobody stops there. It's funny. They are still, I think, the biggest, and I think they still have at least a will to change. But yeah, look, they're very, very crypto. I mean, I think they have one guy only working there on Bitcoin. All the rest are working on crypto. It's very weird. But yeah, but the idea is good. I mean, if the customer has an option, if they want that their seed is being backupped by other companies that none of us can touch it, I think that's kind of a good middle ground for many of our users. Those that wouldn't want it, of course, don't tick the box, and nobody has a copy except them. Same like Blue Wallet and same like Breeze.
Yeah. And it does bring up, right now fees are relatively low, but let's say fees rise again. It does kind of bring that concern about, can people afford to be doing every withdrawal from the exchange in a self-custodial way? Because I mean, the typical rule of thumb people have been saying is to keep yourself safe in future high fee scenarios, try to make each of your UTXOs greater than 1 million sats or greater than 0.01 BTC. At today's prices in US dollar terms, that's about $860. So, I mean, it would mean that when people want to stack, they only withdraw if it's above $860 US worth of Bitcoin. And so that could also present another concern. And I understand maybe if I think about Bull Bitcoin, right, in Canada, they are using and playing around with the idea of doing LBTC. And I think the idea is that you would have LBTC, which is a sidechain Bitcoin, right? To be clear, there's trade-offs with that. It's custodial in the sense that the Bitcoin are custodied by the 12 or 15, multi-sig functionaries or whatever. But point is, maybe that would be the staging ground for people before they get enough to justify doing on-chain Bitcoin withdrawal. I'm curious, what do you think about that?
Yeah. Well, our solution or our idea of the solution is a bit different. We're thinking that the users will, they download the app, they write down the 12 words, and those 12 words are both on-chain and Lightning. So if they're making small amounts, it will go to their Lightning, unless specifically they choose that they want it to go to on-chain. It will go to their Lightning wallet. If they want larger amount, it will go to the on-chain. So our app will like automatically choose the default, but the user can change that. So if you just want to stack $10, obviously it will withdraw to your Lightning. If you want to stack, $1,000, it will by default go to on-chain. But as I said, you can put that on Lightning as well.
But then it's like different trade-offs around having inbound liquidity, right? Because if you don't have enough inbound liquidity, you're doing another on-chain transaction fee, and then you're paying on-chain just for like $10 might not be worthwhile. Like if it's $1 on-chain fee to resize the channel, etc., right? Or unless because then the other trade-off is, okay, pay a little bit up front and have like 2 million sats of inbound capacity or something like this, right?
Yeah. Well, we're probably gonna look. There's what Breeze is doing. Breeze has solution for that, which as I'm sure you're familiar with. So that's like one option. Another option is that, as I said, like our Lightning currently is powered by Wallet of Satoshi, and we hope to keep it that way. So we'll see what the solution they will come up with.
If they end up having some, gotcha.
Yeah. Look, as long as it's all about doing what we can. This is exactly something that we told Ostrak. We told us, look, some of our users, they want to like buy $5 every hour. It's impossible to do it as a self-custodial, almost impossible, and it's very easy to do it as custodial. So they understand that like not all of the users will benefit from what they're doing, but unfortunately. Look, it's funny because when we say Ostrak, and I haven't met with anyone, from FATF. I met with, Ostrak people that represent Australia there, but it's not the same, as going to one of their meetings. But when you think about Ostrak, many times like you think of this like, faceless, big body that maybe, sees Bitcoin as the enemy and so on. But then when you sit and meet with them, in video meetings and so on, then these are just like, good people, they wake up in the morning and they want to make the world a better place. I mean, we have this agreement on how to reach that goal and what is, the way to get to a better world. But it's not like they want to do harm. They want to do good. We believe that some of the things that they're doing is actually harmful. I mean, I mentioned to them more than once, 1984. I mentioned to them more than once, Giacomo had a great speech, I keep quoting it about KYC. And I said, like, imagine if I have a petrol station and you come to fill, petrol in your car, and I said, no, I have to see your ID and everyone has ID that is in your car, and let me check the boot, and where are you going? Where are you coming from? I don't want this to, my petrol to be used for terrorism, So it's ridiculous when you think about petrol, KYCing petrol, but I mean, why KYC Bitcoin and not KYC petrol? And why does in Australia, you can buy gold $5,000 a day with no KYC? You can go gambling $10 and win $10,000 a day with no KYC, but Bitcoin from the first cent, the KYC, So there's all these things that we're bringing, to them. Some of the things, unfortunately, most of the things are above their pay grade. They're saying, look, this is what FATF wants, and we have to, follow their recommendation. Or this is the bill that was introduced, passed in Parliament, and we have to, build regulations around it. So many of the things that we whinge about are not, not something that they can control. But at least I think that, as the Bitcoin industry body, we are making a dent, and at least, making them see things. Because they used to meet only with crypto bros, and crypto bros and Bitcoiners, have very, very different opinions.
Right, because crypto bros want to make, shitcoins legal, right? And they want to make, shitcoin scamming as legal as possible. Whereas Bitcoiners are sort of more interested in this idea of, hey, let me self-custody, don't impinge on, those aspects, or,
Yeah, so it's very interesting meeting with them, and I hope I think we are making small differences. And sometimes that's all you need, something like 1-2% shift in the policy is enough, for you to be able to to carry on, I guess, and that's what we're hoping, that they won't kill the whole thing and just leave us with the 3-4 big crypto exchanges and nothing else.
Yeah, it seems a bit. Yeah, I think that's one of the challenges with some of these organizations, right? Like, because there'll be some Aussie Bitcoiners who are like, screw the regulators, screw the government, be cypherpunks, do everything peer-to-peer, and just never even talk to the government.
Good.
That's one side of it. And then on the other side, it's like, there may be others who see it like, well, how much money or how much resources are you asking for to try to go lobby the government when actually you're being really ineffective and you haven't stopped the KYC, as an example, right? And the answer will be, okay, look, actually there's a lot of things that are above that person's pay grade, but nevertheless, is it worthwhile putting money in to try to lobby to at least lower or minimize the level of government regulation, whatever is coming?
Yeah. Look, I think so. I mean, we had this objection when BIB, first came, that like was first founded. Some Bitcoiners said, "Oh, we shouldn't cooperate with the government, shouldn't play their game, just do Bitcoin and that's it." But look, it's true for Bitcoiners. I always say like no KYC Bitcoin is better than KYC Bitcoin, which is better than no Bitcoin. So there is this hierarchy, and I think that and self-custody is super important. Although from what I'm seeing, I think most people will never self-custody Bitcoin. I think most people will use some custodial, whether it's going to be, an institution like a bank, or it's going to be an exchange or custodial services. I mean, look, even exchanges don't custody most of their Bitcoin. I mean, that's many people don't know that. I mean, they're talking about a fractional reserve of exchanges. I mean, some exchanges have zero reserve, zero. All of it is with some, third-party custodial services. Such as BitGo, for example, and that's it. They don't even custody none of their Bitcoin, So I think that, this whole custody thing is self-custody is super important, but I think many people don't use it. Now, a BIB is there mainly to give a voice to the Bitcoin industry body. The Bitcoin industry body, is obviously KYC and compliant and, and works within, the law, and it does try to change the law, on a few things, but also when new law and new bills are being introduced, it is, making submissions, it giving its opinion. Again, we don't know how much that helps. From what we're hearing, it does help a bit, and at least they're saying some point of view or some argument that they didn't hear from the crypto bros or didn't think of themselves. So I think we are doing some good, and I think some good is better than than not doing anything at all. But I think Bitcoiners have to make a difference between the industry and the community, and the community, of course, I mean, as people, we should be rebellious. The government should be afraid of us, not we should be afraid of them, of course. But as a company, as an industry, it's the other way around. I mean, the company is not afraid. I mean, the government shouldn't be afraid of companies, The companies should be afraid of the laws of the government, So I think there's a difference between companies and people. And people, as I said, the government serves the people. It doesn't need to serve the companies. It just needs to facilitate some environment for the companies to flourish in order to provide services again to the people. So that's, I think, what we're trying to do with a BIB. I don't know how much successful
Australian
we are.
Bitcoin industry body, just for people,
Yeah. Sorry, I keep mentioning that. The Australian Bitcoin industry body, So we've been around since I think 2021. And until then, the Bitcoin exchanges had no voice. Like Ostrak used to meet with the crypto industry body and with their members, but not with us, because we didn't even know these meetings are happening. And then one time, somebody made a mistake in the crypto industry body and invited me to a meeting with Ostrak. And I went to that meeting and asked Ostrak, why are you meeting with them and not with us? And they said, oh, we're just meeting with the industry body, and the industry body invites their members. I said, but we're not a crypto industry, we're a Bitcoin industry. And that's when I understood we have to have our own industry body, and that's how it happened, And then we teamed up with, Daniel from What Satoshi and from Daniel from Hardblock. It was me and the two Daniels, and we co-founded, the Bitcoin industry body. And I'm happy to say that all the Bitcoin exchanges in Australia joined as members, and now there's even non-exchange members. And there's more and more sponsors, and even Cobra, from Bitcoin.org gave his blessing, and he's like Bitcoin.org is a global supporter of a BIB, which something that I'm it's sentimental, but I'm very proud of. And Bayani is now the CEO, and he does an amazing job. And we're now talking more with mainstream. They are now talking more with mainstream media. They're talking more with government. It comes to a point where government now introduces a legislation, and they approach a BIB asking for a comment, for a submission. So I think it is good that a BIB exists, and I think more and more Bitcoiners are seeing it. And as I said, we just do what we can and hope that that it's enough and it's better than nothing.
I see. Yeah. Interesting. So yeah, hopefully, people can push back on it. I think it's going to be one of those things where it's a bit of a long slog. The analogy, or at least the way I'm thinking about it, is kind of like how, right now, most people, they probably think AML laws, if they even think of AML laws at all, they think they're just kind of benign, right? They don't really think, they're massively costly and they are impinging liberty and unethical. And there's not as much of a willingness to just sort of go fully against them, right? So when something goes wrong, what happens is, maybe, as an example, the people who don't know any better will sort of say, oh, look at this bank, they were found to be doing money laundering, therefore you need to do more money laundering regulation and more legislation and da-da-da-da and so on. And then it kind of starts this bad cycle where maybe the politicians say, okay, maybe we need to do more AML laws, and then Austrac and the other regulators say, okay, well, we need to put in more blah, blah, blah. And now the banks and all the other people, okay, well, we need to comply with all of this AML. Where, I mean, from the principled libertarian view, it's like, no, just abolish all AML laws, full stop. But that's going to be a while to sort of shift public opinion, but it can happen, right? Like, look at how Ron Paul was talking about, end the Fed for so long before anyone would listen. And now it's become a big thing. And now people are they know to sort of be skeptical of the Federal Reserve, as an example. And so I think maybe AML laws will be in a similar thing to that, right? That right now there's not a lot of us who are sort of against it right now, but over time, if people sort of start to understand, okay, here's the threat, here's actually the way it's not helping society, here are the massive costs society is paying in terms of compliance and people who just can't access financial services or Bitcoin because of it. So I think it's just there's gonna be a few years where it really sucks.
Yeah, I think we're already in those years where it sucks, but hopefully it won't get worse. Look, there is a Libertarian Party in Australia. There are Bitcoin. I think they're also Bitcoin only. Taylor Green, is their South Australian candidate. He's a Bitcoiner. He's very active on Twitter, and there was this TV show and. I forgot the name, but he said there that people were, instead of being reminded that they are warriors, they're being told that they're sheep, and then when the wolf comes, they're calling the shepherd instead of defending themselves. And I think that is a bit of the issue in Australia, where people just love the nanny state, and if something goes wrong, instead of taking responsibility, they just call for more regulation. I mean, we're seeing this with our users. That we think they're being scammed, so we're asking them, more enhanced, due diligence questions. They're lying to us, they're lying to us, and then later they get scammed, and we're asking, why did you lie? And they say, oh, I was told that I should lie because everyone lies. Or like, but man, why would you trust a stranger over the phone? Then we're telling you we think something here is off, and it's, oh yeah, no, I think, and then they're upset with us, they're upset with their banks for not stopping them, and they're upset the government for not regulating the banks and the exchanges harder. So instead of taking responsibility for their own actions, they blame everyone else. And that, exactly as you said, is causing then the government to say, oh, okay, we need to govern things harder and to govern the people harder. So I think it is like a vicious cycle that that just gets worse again. But the tide could shift and it will get better.
Yeah. All right. I think it's an interesting point, but I mean, maybe you might want to. This is interesting to me because I also understand, and you touched on this earlier, that some Australian banks are blocking transfers to the Bitcoin exchanges. And as I understand, some of that is, you could argue, some of them mean well, right? Because there is this kind of elder abuse or elder scams with old people who don't really know, or kind of non-tech savvy people who are getting scammed. And a common vector for that is the scammer tells them, hey, go send money to this Bitcoin exchange, buy Bitcoin and send it to me as part of their scam or whatever. There might be some gift vouchers or some other steps to that story, but that's part of it, right? I'm curious if you can elaborate a bit on that, and how much of that is legitimately trying to protect the customer, and on how much of that is, blocking the exit ramps and it's blocking the fiat exits.
Yeah. Well, look, that's a great one, because a lot of Bitcoiners think, oh, banks hate Bitcoin, that's what they're doing it. Yes, maybe, but not 100%, as you said. I mean, we also understand why banks are doing what they're doing. The banks have also their industry body. It's called, ABA, the Australian Banking Association. ABA refuses to meet with a BIB in order to discuss those things, because according to the ABA, as far as I understand, they already know everything, so they don't need to waste their time sitting with us, which is very annoying. But we understand where banks are coming from with their concerns. We've seen it happen. I mean, we've seen people lose significant amounts of money because they lied to us, to the banks, and they lost money. So and then they turn around to the banks, and the banks, they don't need this grief and don't want it. I mean, they don't make a lot of money from checking accounts, and eventually, they just have all this drama to deal with. And they're afraid of then governments, regulating them harder because of those issues. So we understand, where they're coming from. We don't agree with the tools. Okay, so I think that, for example, what CBA is doing, and we said it from day one, is just like a hammer approach. It said, 10 grand, that's it. That's the maximum that you can get scammed with. With CBA is 10 grand a month. I don't think that that's correct, because if you have only 20 grand, then okay, maybe 10 grand is too much for you. But you have like millions, with CBA, then 10 grand is nothing. It's going to take you like over a year to buy one Bitcoin. So that's silly. We think that there should be some more middle ground, and maybe some special application, maybe even for a fee, something that the bank will be satisfied with. Maybe they do their enhanced due diligence, for an extra fee. But eventually the customer signs a piece of paper that they understand that if they're being scammed, that's on them. Now the banks, again, if they had more trust with us and would similar, they would say, we also do our enhanced due diligence when we think something is wrong. When we think something is wrong, we also ask questions. If they come back with like horrible answers, then sometimes we even close the account, because we know this yells scam at us. Just yell, we know this is getting scammed. And we cannot tell them, right, because of the tipping off rule. So there is this rule. I don't know if you touched on this in your previous, but the tipping off rule, it's not allowed for us to tell, hey, we think you're getting scammed, because then they could turn around to the scammer and tell them the scammer will learn for next time. So we have to, be a bit more subtle about it. Although obviously, if we close the account, the scammer understands that something triggered our system, but he doesn't know what. As going back to the banks, again, we understand where they're coming from. We just disagree with their approach. And look, Ostrak also, as far as I know, Ostrak also disagrees with that approach. Ostrak wrote a guidance to the banks and told them not to debank and not to limit too much, because what they're causing is just to people to go to other avenues. So for example, if you cannot send money to the bank, okay, you withdraw cash and go meet somebody in some alley and buy Bitcoin there. So now you have like a physical danger to you, and it's the KYC free, which the system doesn't like, because it doesn't, cannot control it and cannot trace it as easily, so I think this will, hopefully, look, this will, get a bit, better with many other things. Currently, since FTX, things are just getting worse. We haven't, I don't know if it's in the bottom, in this sense. I don't know if it's in the bottom yet. I hope so. I hope the bottom is near, because, as I said, for the past few years, it just got harder and harder.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, lots of interesting... it makes a lot of sense there, and hopefully things turn around on that point around the bank restrictions. And I guess for now, what are people doing? They're just going to another bank, or they're trying to use another bank to send to Bitcoin exchanges?
Yeah, well, look, that's exactly what people are doing. They're opening multiple banks, and then they're sending money from multiple banks. Now, sometimes that triggers us sometimes, but we learn to disregard it because too many people are doing it for legit reasons. So we're no longer watching that as a red flag. And now the issue is that, people asking, for example, on forums, which one, who is a good bank? And then somebody says, Bank X. And then they're going to Bank X. Everyone is piling out to Bank X. And Bank X suddenly sees a lot of new users, and they're immediately sending money from a different bank and immediately to a digital exchange. And they're like, so now this Bank X becomes worried. So right. It's very interesting.
Some risk manager in that bank will wake up and be like, wait a sec, now we need to put in a rule, and now 10,000 or whatever rule there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what happens. The most friendly banks sometimes become, the most unfriendly banks, and it just happens like that. So we stack while we can, right? And I think that everyone should have different options to stack. KYC free. We launched recently our KYC free version, where anyone could just download our app and start sending and receiving Bitcoin, because we think that Bitcoin should be KYC free. We're hoping that one day there will be at least a threshold, or the whole thing will be abolished, the whole KYC. Look, this is something that we asked Ostrak, and this also was asked on public forums, in Congress and so on in the States, like how much actual money laundering did they stop with all this KYC? And they don't have an answer. They don't know. And there was this report last year by the European police department, the whole European police,
Interpol or whatever,
and they said 90-something% of the funds remain at the hands of the abusers. So they're not retrieving funds, they're not finding it, they're not stopping anything. So why are we doing all this? It just adds a lot of cost, a lot of burden. And that's where I bring 1984 into the conversation. I'm telling us okay, there is crime happening in the streets. Maybe we should have all the streets with cameras. And you know what? There's also domestic abuse. Maybe we should have also cameras inside the house. There is no limit. There is no limit to how much the big brother wants to watch everything and know everything, because it's for the good of the people. So I'm happy that there is a shift in government in the States where they're talking more about personal liberties. It's obviously happening also in Argentina, in El Salvador, of course, as we know. It's happening in other countries as well. I hope that this, winds of change will, sweep, and, common sense and personal choices will, sweep across the globe, and will, reach Australia as well. Because we can do better, and we can teach people for more personal choice. We can have the banks, be more, treating their customers as adults instead of kids that need to be protected from themselves, and eventually, we will have the freedom and the kind of the world that we want to live, for the next generations. Because I don't think that this trend that is happening in the last few years, I don't think that this is what we want for the next generations.
Back to the show in a moment. This show brought to you by CoinKite.com, the creators of the best Bitcoin hardware security devices, such as the Cold Card Mark IV and the new Cold Card Q. Now, we use Bitcoin hardware security devices to keep our keys offline, our private keys offline. Now, the way these work is you can do that setup, write down your 12 or 24 words on the seed word cards, and keep that secure. Now, you can use this device to interact with the Bitcoin network using software such as Sparrow Wallet, Electrum, or Vector Desktop, or Nunchuck as a few examples. Now, you have a range of security features that you can use with these devices, such as passphrases. You can use seed XOR, or my favorite is multi-signature. Now, if you're starting in a basic way, just start with the device and the USB-C cable, plug it directly to the computer and use it that way, and then later improve your setup. But I believe these devices are great at helping secure your coins, especially as you start to migrate up into multi-signature security. But don't be disheartened or don't be scared away. They are accessible, and I think you actually do learn about Bitcoin in the process. So to get yours, go to coinkite.com, use code Livera to get a discount on your cold card. This episode brought to you by Galoy. They are building banking software for the Bitcoin age. So if you are with a bank, a fintech, or a startup looking to offer some kind of Bitcoin product, whether that is a Bitcoin collateralized loan, deposit accounts, or payments, Galoy can help you. Their latest product is called Lana. It is a loans management platform, and you can use this to come to market quickly and offer a loans or Bitcoin collateralized lending product for your customers. Now, Galoy have a lot of experience in the space. They started with Blink Wallet in 2020, and they've since grown this to become a community favorite over time. And so they have a lot of experience making things work in a secure, reliable, and scalable way. So if you need assistance coming to market quickly with a Bitcoin banking product, such as lending or deposits or payments, talk to the team at Galoy. You can email them. The email is biz@galoy.io, or go to the website galoy.io. And now, back to the show. I think it's a good point you make about trying to encourage self-responsibility for things. That if there's always this mindset of, oh, daddy, mummy, government, come in and save me, it's just not gonna be conducive to sort of create an actual society where people are actually grown up and independent and resilient individuals But instead, we're walking into this world where people are just all being coddled. And okay, yeah, now there's some pushback in some parts of the world, like in America, but it seems that other parts of the world are sort of full steam ahead on the coddling of the adult individuals, which seems crazy to me. On the Bitaroo side, you mentioned a couple of things. So you mentioned the app that's KYC free. So is that for the merchant to use, or can you explain a bit about that?
Well, I mean, both. It actually did start from the merchant point of view. Like we launched the point of sale, where unlike, there are a few points of sale already, in the world and in Australia, and most, I think all of them, or at least, the bigger ones, I mean, you go to the merchant and you orange pill him and he accepts now Bitcoin, but then his next question is, now what? Now what they do with it? So our point of sale is a bit different, where when you set it up, the merchant can choose if he wants to immediately convert it into dollars. So if you paid $5 for coffee, you paid with SAT, but he gets $5. And then he can also choose if he wants immediately to get it into his bank account, those dollars. So these are both optional, but some merchants, use it and love it, because if you're have a pizza place and you just want, the money now, because you have, 90% of your income is expenses anyway, so you want, the fiat. So we introduced that, but then we discovered that the onboarding is hard, because first you have to do KYC. And if you're a company, that KYC takes 2 business days, for the whole thing. So we said, okay, that's no good, So we said, okay, we should have a KYC free version, so merchants can immediately start using the points of sale. Great. So once we introduced that, we're thinking, okay, now we can take it globally, because if we're KYC free, then we don't have to remain only in Australia anymore. So now we are available in 172 countries, in the app stores and in the Google Plays of 172 countries. Where you can just download the Bitaroo app and start sending and receiving Bitcoin KYC free. And then if you want to buy Bitcoin or to touch fiat in any way, then we ask you, are you a Australian citizen or resident? If yes, we start to onboard you. If not, then we say, unfortunately, at the moment we can't. So so the KYC free the app is now, it starts with KYC free for everyone. And then if you want to get, to buy Bitcoin, then you get verified. So now, look, Daniel might be upset hearing it, but for years, I was actually orange pilling people using WOS. I was Wallet of Satoshi. I was just telling them, download Wallet of Satoshi, and I send you $1 worth of Bitcoin, and now they can see that this $1 is worth, $1.20. So, if I had $1,000, it would be $1,200. So we used to have this. I would used to orange pill people, using Wallet of Satoshi. This trick, by the way, I learned from the Bush Bash from Sir William, because that's how he taught me that he's taught everyone that he's the orange pilling people. And I was like, that's genius. I just send them a fixed amount of sats, but that's silly, because the sats remain sats, but if you send them $1 worth, they can see that, oh, this $1 is now worth $1.50 and so on. So and so I used to orange peel people with Wallet of Satoshi, but now we orange peel them obviously with Bitaroo. So now you just go to anyone and and say, oh, yeah, download Bitaroo, I'll send you money, and Bitaroo to Bitaroo is free. So we just say, I send you $1 worth of sats. Everyone is happy, and now if you want to get verified, then you already have the app and you can keep on going. So that's one thing that we launched with Bitaroo. I think that's a big one. The KYC free, the shift. Of course, then Austria came and said they wanted to KYC on Bitcoin wallets. And I was like, but it's okay. We actually launched the KYC free a bit early, and we had, because of some minor bugs, because we heard that Austria wants to have KYC on Bitcoin wallets. We wanted to have skin in the game, and we told us to Austria as well, to their faces, we actually launched early because we want to have skin in the game as soon as possible, because I think this, from an ideological point of view, I think this is wrong. I think Bitcoin doesn't touch fiat, your money, your rules, but it's not your money, leave me alone. That's kind of my philosophy on this. But as we said, FATF and Austria disagree, unfortunately. So that's one big thing that we launched with Bitaroo. Another thing is as I said, when the ETFs came out and I started to see that boomers and zoomers are using it, it's okay, what are the points of difference besides the 24/7? You can buy and sell Bitcoin anytime. What are the points of difference? So we launched. You can pay your bills now with Bitcoin. You could load it to a debit card with Bitcoin. We launched the Guardian, which is a multi-sig solution where you hold 2 out of 3 keys. We hold just one as a backup. We launched the vault where you keep the coins with us and you can see them on the blockchain. So you know that like, your, 0.5231 Bitcoin are yours. You can see them on the blockchain. This way also, by the way, if something happens to us and we get hacked or whatever, you could see that your coins were not affected. Therefore, you shouldn't, suffer from the hack. So there are advantages to it. People are using it for very different reasons. Very interesting. Some of them as estate planning. They're just like telling their, their estate, if something happens to me, this is the address, this is Bitaroo, talk to them, and you get your coins back. So you don't need to tell them how to keep your seed, and some of them are happy to pay the fee. I mean, it's like, for them, it's a lower fee than VCs are charging and so on. So venture, yeah. So
I see,
venture capital funds, yeah. So it's very interesting. All these things are happening, yes.
Also, we were talking a little bit earlier about exchanges and how, obviously there's been a lot of fraud over the years, right? The Mt. Goxes and the FTXs of the world. Any thoughts on like proof of reserves? Do you think that approach could get popularized at exchanges and maybe even with custodians around the world?
Yeah. Look, I don't know about custodials. I mean, I think maybe custodians, yes, because that's kind of their job, maybe. I don't know. With exchanges, I don't think so, because again, because some exchanges are using, custodians as their, as their custodial service, so they cannot prove that they have it because they don't do self-custody themselves.
Right, but then it would be a matter of like pushing their custodian to help them kind of...
Yeah. So, I mean, look, for example, a lot of exchanges are using BitGo. If BitGo doesn't give proof of reserves, then, how can any exchange that is using them give proof of reserve, So, and the thing is, look, with all this proof of reserve, all the solutions that I've seen to date, it's interesting because if you're a noob, you don't care. You don't check that. You have no idea. You don't care. She'll be right, and so on. It's a big exchange, been around for a while. I don't care. I trust it. She'll be right. And if you are savvy, then you don't really care because you don't keep your sats there for long anyway.
Yeah.
So,
well, even there it depends, right? Because there would be, you might keep most of your coins off exchange, but there might be some, let's say, traders who keep some on the exchange for trading purposes. And it could also be kind of like the savvy users protect the noobs in some sense, because they're the ones watching and kind of making sure that these people are not running off with the coins or this kind of thing.
Yeah, look, maybe. I mean, like, I don't have a very firm opinion about it. I just think, look, on a personal level, the best way to do proof of reserve is to withdraw, and then, you have your own proof of your own reserves. That's number one. Number two, on the individual level, as a user, Vault, provides you can see your sats on the blockchain. I mean, there's nothing better than that. It's not like, some kind of a code that tells you that your sats are part of the pile here. You can actually see your own address and your own sats. And then on the exchange level, I don't think it's easy. I don't even look, personally on Bitaroo, I don't feel comfortable saying how many coins we have in custody. I think that's like, an OPSEC issue. I mean, and I know River just now launched, their, proof of reserves. I didn't look into it. I'm not a River's user, obviously, so I don't know, how much I can even drill into it. But I know that Binance was talking. I think they did it as well. And people were saying, there's proof of reserve, but there's no proof of liability. I think River did, one step better, which they actually provided proof of liabilities. I don't know if we can audit them. I don't know if their users can audit them. I think the idea is good, but I think it's a bit of a false sense of security ultimately, because even if Bitaroo proves to you that we have all the stats of all the users today, it means nothing about tomorrow. And it means nothing about, that we can get hacked anyway. I think the best way that users can protect themselves is by withdrawing. The second best way is putting them in the vault, because the vault is hard to, I mean, it's completely cold. It's 3 out of 5, it's on the blockchain. So you can see the addresses, immediately. You can even put an alarm on your watch wallet to see if it moved, and you can know immediately that, your sats are safe, because you don't really care about other people. I mean, you care about that your sats are safe. So I think it's a bit, it's hard for me to see Bitaroo doing this for those reasons. And I don't see a lot of demands from it. I mean, I'm seeing it from Bitcoin Twitter, where people, just love the idea. But for them, I have just one word: withdraw. That's the best thing you can do. I mean, our traders, look, we have market makers. They are not concerned. For them, this is a capital at risk. This is just something that could happen. We have personal relationship with them. I'm sure they will kick my ass if something will happen to their sats, but that's pretty much it. Hopefully that won't happen. And that's what we're working towards. I mean, look, Bitaroo always had the policy, like internal policy, that if we get hacked, we will do our best to cover it from our own funds. Obviously, this is the most important thing. If not, then I'm guessing the logical step is that people will pro rata share, the damage. Those that are in the vault, of course, will be exempted because their coins were not hacked. So anyone who is concerned about the reserve, I'm saying seriously withdraw. I mean, you have Lightning. You can withdraw to your own Lightning wallet or to a custodial wallet, if you feel more comfortable with that than exchange, which probably is true. And that's it, But yeah, I don't know. Telling the world how much. I'm seeing River doing it. I'm like, wow, I didn't know they have that many coins. So it's a bit weird. It's a bit scary. I mean, maybe I'll meet with the guys there and talk about it and see how they deal with their paranoia, because it is very scary. Look, before Bitaroo, maybe like 5 people around the world knew I even have Bitcoin. Now, like a lot of people know, and from day one, I was super paranoid about it, and we were super paranoid about it. I don't touch the wallets. I mean, you could beat the shit out of me, and nothing will happen, to the wallets, because that's how we built it, But it is still scary that people will try, because it happened now to Ledger, the Ledger co-founder just happened to him, and we don't know what they even wanted from him. Did they want his Bitcoin, or did they want the Ledger users' Bitcoin? I mean, it's all very, very scary, all those things. The best thing that people can do, if you ask me, is self-custody, ideally, with multi-sig and passphrases, and there's no end to the paranoia. And the more money you have, the more, you want to change your custody solutions. When I first started, it was the web wallet. There were no hardware wallets. There was no hardware wallets. That's now there's like web wallets and then the hardware wallets. So I did single sig, and then you move to passphrase, then you move to multi-sig. There's no end, to paranoia. Today, again, it's always something that I review, every year or two. I review, my custody setup, and sometimes, changes are needed because I know more, or because, I don't know, there's a new attack vector I didn't think about.
Yeah. I think totally fair advice around self-custody. The proof of reserves, I did actually an episode with Alex Leishman for listeners where we spoke about their proof of reserves setup. So that's there for anyone interested. On the, I guess, just adoption side, I'm curious if you have any thought. Do you see it like, at least so far in this bull run, that it's mostly, there's been a lot of ETF and, let's say, people buying MicroStrategy and MetaPlanet and Semler Scientific and, these Bitcoin equities, or maybe the miners, public miners. Do you see it like maybe a lot of the new adoption of the new money has come in through that, as opposed to the traditional onto a Bitcoin exchange or Bitcoin brokerage? And, do you think that pattern will continue, or do you think maybe like later this cycle, if things get really crazy, that's when things will really go bananas and you'll get crazy user signups that, retail, quote unquote, will really show up too?
Look, the short answer is I don't know. The longer answer is that I do suspect that ETFs are eating our lunch. Yes, definitely. I think that, in previous bull runs, when you heard, Bitcoin in the news, the only way for you to obtain Bitcoin is either, peer-to-peer or to go to an exchange, which was what most people did. Today you just like hop on your computer and, or your app, and you just like buy the ETF. So I think the ETFs are eating our lunch. It's something that we have now a CSO, a Chief Strategy Officer, Anya, and it's something that we are talking about. That it's possible that this bull run and the next bull runs are going to be more moderate. There's not going to be the retail craze that we know from previous bull runs because of the ETFs. Speaking of proof of reserves, people start, I think that ETFs should start showing, their proof of reserves. We don't know really if they're really buying or this is like, and what's happening with their sats. I think the
I'm with
only
you there.
ETF
Like, I think
Yeah.
I know Bitwise does
Exactly, I
publish
was
their
about to say,
addresses,
the only one I
so
know is
good on them
Bitwise.
for that.
Yeah,
But
100%.
maybe all the other ETFs should be pushed. Any big
100%.
public entity should be pushed to proof of reserves or
100%.
something like this.
Look, MicroStrategy, or Strategy are buying, obviously, as we know, Bitcoin in huge amounts. I think it sits with BitGo. We don't know what's happening there, we have to remember that like a lot of the coins that are being used are used for derivatives. And with derivatives, as we know, like you can easily and safely, relatively safely, make one Bitcoin behave like 5 or 10, and then like you can play shorts and so on. And I think a lot of the coins are being used for that. So people are buying Bitcoin, keeping them on exchange or with some custodial service, and those somehow reach into Bybit, that just got hacked, unfortunately for them, or other derivative exchanges. So I think that this is. I mean, if we're talking about proof of reserves, I think like the big players are the more the ETFs are and the big custodial services are the one that really it would be good to have their proof, because I don't get it. I don't get how Strategy can buy so much Bitcoin and the price doesn't move, and then like some little bad macro news and the price dumps. I don't care, right? I'm still stacking. I have a small tiny DCA amounts daily that are running. So price goes down, I'm happy. Price goes up, I'm happy. It's all good. But I just like I'm scratching my head. I don't understand how all these ETFs and Strategy are buying all this coin and like the price is not like way higher. It's a bit of a mystery.
As I understand, I mean, looking at what some of the on-chain analyst people are saying, it's that there's actually just a lot of OGs who are selling, and maybe they're not as public about their selling as some of these other buying entities are public about their buying. And so maybe it's just as simple as that, and eventually the sellers get exhausted and then you have another take another big move up. Who knows?
Who knows? We'll
interesting. See. Yeah, who knows what'll happen, and whether we're kind of just chilling here for a little while before the next big move up, or maybe we're having another bear cycle. I mean, who knows? No one knows. But certainly interesting to chat. A lot of, I guess, takeaways. So I guess the main, the one we were talking about really is kind of from the Australian regulatory and legislative perspective is if you can try to speak against some of these rules and laws that are coming that will make it harder for Bitcoiners, that would probably be a good thing. Otherwise, of course, self-custody your coins. Any final last thought?
Yeah, I mean, it would be great if more Bitcoiners will support the Australian Bitcoin industry body. So, they have their website and their Twitter account where you can easily join. You can support. I think it's like $61.50 a year, and then you are invited also to the private Telegram groups where they're sharing information, where you can help with submissions, where you get to know more about the internal workings of how what's happening there. Sponsors after 1 year can also become members if they want, and then they have more voting rights, and they're getting more into the inner circle and meetings with Austrac if they want, and so on. So I think it would be great if more Bitcoiners will join the Australian Bitcoin industry body. Stack sats, stay humble, self-custody, happy and full of joy.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for joining me, Ethan.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.